Welcome to the Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. In this show, we talk to leaders of clubs and interesting folks who live here in the Villages to get perspectives of what is happening here in the Villages, Florida. We are a listener-supported podcast. There will be shout-outs for supporters in episodes.
This is Mike Roth. And listeners, I'm thrilled to share with you this podcast, which is my passion project for you. This podcast brings you knowledge, inspiration, and a lot of things that people need to know about the villages and the people living here. Be sure to hit the follow button to get the newest episode each week. Creating this podcast is a labor of love, even though it demands more time I can easily spare. Now, here's where you come in. You can help us keep the podcast alive and thriving. How? By becoming a supporter. The easy way for you to support us is to visit our podcast webpage, openforuminthevillagesflorida.com, and click on the supporter button at the top of the page, or the purple supporter box. Even a small donation of $3 to $10 a month makes a big difference, and you can cancel your subscription at any time. Your support means the world to us. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep those headphones on. This is Mike Roth on Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. I'm here today with David Himelrick. Thanks for joining me, David.
Nice to be here.
David moved to the Villages about 5 years ago from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You don't have much of a Southern Louisiana accent.
No, I don't. That's because I grew up in Connecticut.
David lives in Osceola Hills at Soaring Eagle. He spent most of his career as a college professor at Virginia Tech, Cornell, Auburn, and Louisiana State University. His academic area was horticulture, which is a natural lead-in for both magic and comedy.
Absolutely.
Horticulture, okay. Tell me what we have here. You spent a lot of years in the education world and academia.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your life as an academic.
I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great career if anybody's out there is thinking about it. It's always challenging. You remain young because you're constantly learning new things. You have a lot of personal freedom. Most of the time, people don't know where you are or what you're doing. As long as you answer your phone calls and your emails and show up for class, you're fine. So I like the personal freedom. You could think about what am I most interested in life and go research that thing. And I just really liked being on a college campus. It's a wonderful place to be. I like going to the library, walking across campus, going to football games. I really enjoyed teaching classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have one of our improv players, Dr. Bill Bateman, who moved to the Villages, and then he went back to Michigan. Is teaching a couple more years up there. He comes back for 12 weeks, and he goes back to school. Now, why don't you tell our listeners what got you into magic, mentalism, or becoming a psychic entertainer?
Sure. Mike, my entire life, I was always interested in the strange and unusual. Since I was a little kid, I thought of things like researching, reading about these things. I remember UFOs, a big deal when I was little. I was reading about UFOs. And then I was reading about things like the abominable snowman or Yeti, or now it's more like in Bigfoot, but still the same guy we're talking about here. Very interested in that and other cryptoids like the Loch Ness Monster and other things.
Yeah, I actually went to Loch Ness to figure that one out.
Yeah, I've been there too. A fun place in Scotland.
There was.
All of these things progressed into other things. I began to get interested in the spiritual realm around us, if you might call it, ghosts, haunted houses, witchcraft, demonic possession, all of those kinds of things, not so much participatory, but more investigative, which eventually led me down the road to the world of psychics, because I realized that there were psychics out there using professional magic tricks and good psychology to convince me that they knew everything about me. So I realized that if I don't know all the tricks and the psychological principles they're going to use against me, they're going to fool me every single time. So I started to read. Most people who get into what I call psychic entertainment or mentalism or mental magic get into it kind of backdoor, wanting to know. They'll put something in their magic act that looks psychic and they'll put something else in. But me, I went straight to mentalism or psychic entertainment because I wanted to learn all of those tricks of the professional psychic.
So you think People who say they're psychics really are tricksters?
Yes, there are several categories of people that are doing these sorts of things. One category we would call shut-eyes. A shut-eye is close your eyes and believer. You think what you're doing is real, convinced it is real, and that you have skills and abilities to help people. They're not scamming you. They believe they're helping you.
A lady on our podcast, she has worked for the police to help them solve cases.
I will tell you, I'm a skeptic, so she may have told you that, but I think I would like to get in it a little more deeply before I would say, I've never come across a person who can really do it under controlled conditions.
One of my favorite things is show me the double-blind study to prove that you're right.
Exactly. That's science for you.
I grew up with that too. So what event in your life pushed you in the direction of magic and mentalism?
Good question. There were a lot of things that I was accumulating over time. And then I got into magic to learn the tricks of the trade of psychics. And I can make you believe that I have psychic abilities.
Mm-hmm.
For example, let's say we get together for a party and I do a card trick for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just another card trick and you're going to forget it as soon as you walk out the door. I've been performing professionally for large groups. I like to do banquet situations.
For how long? 40 years of performance.
Performance.
Means you were moonlighting
Yeah.
as a college
Exactly.
professor while learning how to be a mentalist.
Exactly. I did a lot of things on campus, and we had a big hotel and conference center. So I was hooked in with the administration there. They would recommend me to people who were coming in for conferences and convention, and I'd get hired to do those sorts of things. So it was a lot of fun. I learned how to do these kind of things through magic. And how do I convince you that I can really read your mind? In one of my shows, one of the things I typically do, for example, I'm using different people, but I'll pick a guy out and say, Mike, did you ever happen to have a pet when you were a boy? And you'll say, yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, I was a dog, right?
You took a 70-30 bet.
Eventually, I'm going to get it right. I'm going to ask you to write down the name of your dog on an index card, fold it in half and put it in an envelope, seal it up and hold on to it.
Mm-hmm.
Later on during the show, I'm going to tell you the name of your deceased puppy. I've had people come back to me 20 years later. They'll come up and say, Dave, I saw you 20 years ago and you told me the name of my dog, and they never forget it. If I did a card trick for them, they'd have forgotten it the minute they walked out of the room. That's the difference, the impact it has on people. I'm not trying to start a religion. I have a strong disclaimer up front that I claim no paranormal or supernatural abilities, but that I try my best to convince you that I have them.
You've written
Yeah.
a 7-volume set of books
Yes.
on humor
Yes. Yeah.
called Hooks, Lines, and Thinkers.
It's,
Why did you do that, Dave?
how that one started out had to do with performing magic and mentalism, because my style is humor. I like to have a lot of funny lines thrown in because I think it can get slow or even boring. I think I got to keep it fast-paced. And if you're not laughing, I want you to be gasping.
Give us an example.
A lot of things when I will deal with people, give you an example in the show, and I'll be walking around and you'll be sitting in your seat. I'll see, for my next experiment, I need the assistance of a pretty stranger. And I'll touch you on the shoulder, Mike, and say, excuse me, sir, you look pretty strange. Would you mind helping me out? Those things are fun. People laugh, and then we move on down the road. I just really enjoy what I do. It makes me feel good.
You make people feel good too.
Yeah.
Okay. How come you came up with a 7-book series? Hooks. Okay. Lines and Thinkers. Needed 7 books to cover 3 things?
Here's how it worked out. I'm writing lines for my show, and every time I see something funny on a card or a sweatshirt or an internet site, I would write it down. I had scraps of papers and boxes, funny lines I'd written down here and there, and no organizations. When be personal computers there, I said I should put this on the computer. I began to transfer those lines to the computer. But then I just had lots of lines on the computer instead of pieces of paper. So then I said, you need to categorize these things so you can find them a little bit easier. Things for introductions, things for if you want a joke about money or whatever you need. How are you going to do that? I started collecting more and more over time, categorizing new categories, till eventually I'll tell you how big it is so your listeners can focus how many words that mean. An average novel they're going to buy in the bookstore, about 100,000 words. This is plus 700,000 words. That's the reason it's 7 volumes. Each volume, more like an encyclopedia. Volume 1 has pre-show announcements. What funny things can you say? It's not only for magicians and mentalists, it's for anybody who's a public speaker and has to talk in front of a group of people. Or if you have to be the leader and you need some funny things to say. Let's say you need to get everybody to sit down and take their seats. Got a whole chapter of funny things you can say that's not going to offend them, but yet they'll get the message across. Time to sit down. Let's say almost everybody, if you were the MC of any kind of organization or show, and you got to introduce a bunch of people for the annual award banquet, where are you going to look for that stuff? I have huge chapters on introductions, funny introductions.
How long has this been available in the marketplace?
Not out yet. It's completed, but not in publication yet. You will be able to in a few months, but not right now.
And it'll be all 7 books.
Yeah, see, that's one of the problems I see with marketing this. It's like buying, Mike, would you like to buy an encyclopedia? And you said, I don't know. But you'd have to buying A, B, and then you got to get C, D, and E. And pretty much each one of these volumes has a different kind of topical areas and things.
Let's go through the 7 areas.
Well,
the set of hooks, lines, and sinkers.
They're not really topical areas. The first ones would be that pre-show announcements, then introductions. Then the next set of things are your response to introductions. What do you say if the guy gave a really long introduction or a really short introduction, or everything he said was wrong about you? All of those kinds of things that you can respond to quickly if you didn't like the introduction. Then we go to the first thing you're going to say when you walk out to any group or organization. You're on a fast track, so the first few seconds, people are thin slicing what you're about to say to them. I walk out, what do I say? What do I say to get your attention? I never recommend that people tell a joke because they can't usually do a very good job at it. Many people in the audience have already heard the joke, and it takes too long. A lot of people think when I'm going to give a talk, I'll start by opening up with a joke. I don't recommend you do that. I recommend you get right into something clever, funny, and then sprinkle your entire presentation with clever lines.
Can you give us an example of that, Dave?
I could give you 750,000 lines of it. It depends where you are and what you want to do. You need lines for many situations. It can get you out of trouble. For example,
I just invited you to be a guest speaker at the Improv Club.
Okay.
What's the first line you're going to use?
Okay. I'll tell you how I start my act. How's that? The guy or the lady has already read a humorous introduction that I've written, and they know what I'm going to do. I start off by saying, because I'm trying to program you about what we're going to do tonight. Are you all ready to have some fun tonight? I'm really happy to be here tonight. Actually, I'm here because of a special program, part of my prison release back to work program. Just 5 more events like this, and my community service hours are complete. That's just a joke. A little later on, I'll do something that's not a joke so you can compare the two.
And so we talked about the first couple of books in the series. What are some of the other titles of the books?
Topical areas.
Okay.
I was designing it because I'm putting together an act or a talk. It could be many things like dating and relationships. Any talk you do, most people in the audience are going to relate to some of those things. So you want some funny lines about being married or dating. You might want some funny lines about money or banking. You might want some funny lines about anything you could imagine. It'll take you a lifetime to find what you want for your talk. And most things are not very funny. So what I've done is all the work for you, filter them out and say, these are funny. Look at these lines and you'll get to where you need to get quickly.
Some of the older comedians like Milton Berle or Bob Hope were rumored to have index cards with jokes of every type.
Exactly.
Some stolen.
They didn't have a computer. If they had a computer, it'd have been on there just like that. Yeah.
And since you're putting it on in a paper book, how do we get to the parts that we...
It's indexed and table of contents, those sorts of things. There will be the hard copy and an ebook. On the ebook, so you can word search. So it'll be easier on an ebook than it will be on the hardcover. But you know what the topical areas that you need to talk about for your talk, or you see this upcoming event you're going to have. So I need a funny line for this.
If I'm going to start a talk for a bunch of doctors and medical people,
you might want some doctor jokes or doctor lines. I would not recommend starting off with a doctor joke because most of the people in the audience have heard the doctor joke already. They will politely laugh at it probably, but you're not hitting them.
A real world problem.
All right.
Let's pretend you're going to do a comedy show for a Greek party here in the villages. How would you get those lines out of your books?
I have a chapter on performing for foreign audiences.
They could be Greek.
I would go to that chapter and say which things would apply to the villages, which things would apply to Greeks. There's lots of section on old people, aging, birthdays, all that stuff. I would go to those sections in the book because I know my target audience is villagers. And I know they want to have something Greek. So those 2 topical areas would be the first place I'd look.
And let's hear a quick Alzheimer's tip from Dr. Craig Curtis. Dr. Curtis, What is the biggest limitation for Alzheimer's research in America?
The biggest limitation for Alzheimer's research is our shortage of patients that get involved in clinical research trials. For example, a couple of years ago, a report came out that showed there were approximately 25,000 open positions for patients with Alzheimer's disease to get involved in research, yet only about 7,000 to 8,000 of those positions went filled for the year. So every year we run a deficit in the United States in filling these clinical trials, which in turn slows our overall ability to complete the clinical trials.
With over 20 years of experience studying brain health, Dr. Curtis's goal is to educate the Villages community on how to live a longer, healthier life. To learn more, visit his website, craigcurtismd.com, or call 352-500-5252 to attend a free seminar.
Now, I understand that you've had an interest in antique cars. Why don't you tell us about some of the antique cars that you've owned? So we have a lot of listeners who like cars here in the village.
If you're a car guy, you know what I'm talking about. You just like them. I've been interested since a kid. My dad had a few not really antique or classic cars, but everything we had was pretty old. Now they're antiques and classics. My dad had a 1964 Cadillac, and he got it from a lady who was selling it, and it only had 1,700 miles on it. So it was pristine. It is my father's joy, because we weren't very wealthy. To have a really cool Cadillac was the thing.
As a 64 Caddy, his driveway on Long Island.
Exactly.
He never drives it.
So it was my dad's driver and all those sorts of things. But when my father passed away, I inherited the car. So that was my first real classic car.
You still have it?
No. I know where it is. It's in Louisiana, where we used to live. Down the road, not too far from Baton Rouge. I sold it to a friend who had a son who was a great restorer of cars, and they're restoring the whole thing as we speak with a frame-off restoration. So it's going to be beautiful once again.
Do you own any antique cars now?
Sold them both. Before, we were living in Baton Rouge for 20 years before we moved to the Villages. So I actually had two cars, but they were the same car. For those of you out there, they're Thunderbirds. The car guys will understand what I mean. They were called the baby birds or the little birds. In 1953 and a half, the Corvette comes out, and there's the first full year of the Corvette, 54. Ford Motor Company says, we need an American sports car because General Motors is selling a lot of those Corvettes. So in 1955, the Ford Motor Company comes out with the first Thunderbird. For 3 years, they remained small, with no back seat. Sports car looking. We call them the baby birds or the little birds. 55, 56, and 57. They changed slightly the style of the car. First year, they had a spare tire and they put it in the trunk, and it's a really small car. The story that I heard, the guys didn't like it because they couldn't fit their golf clubs in the trunk with the spare tire back there. So in the 56, they go to what we call a continental wheel. For those listeners who don't know, it's sitting on the outside of the car in the middle of the trunk facing backwards. And your spare tire is outside the trunk now, but you can certainly get to it if you have a flat tire. And then in 57, they kept the continental wheel, but they moved the bumper back a little. In 58, they start putting a back seat in. So you no longer have the American sports car. So if you want a baby bird, 55, 56, 57, my best, what I call the look, was the 56. It was balanced. It looked good. I had two of them, a white one and a red one. I tried to sell them both when we were moving down to the Villages. One of them had air conditioning, the other one didn't. Not too good living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is much like living in the Villages in the summertime. You really need air conditioning fry out there. So I was able to sell the white one that had the air conditioning, but the red one didn't sell. So I trailered it down here, and I had it in my garage, but it didn't have air conditioning. So I went to a car show, and around the corner of one of the squares of the Spanish Springs, I guess, I'm getting a paper out to write on it saying, for sale. This guy comes up to me and says, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm putting a for sale sign on the front of my car here on the windshield. He said, you don't want to do that. And I said, why? And he said, you want to join the Thunderbird Club. That's why. So he was the president of the Thunderbird Club, taught me into doing it. I kept my car for longer than I intended to, because I knew these guys would know how to get things repaired and who to go to and who can work on old cars and know what they're doing.
So did you put air conditioning in it?
No, I was going to if I kept it, but I decided it's not really what I wanted to do.
So you got that for sale sign out again?
Yeah, but it's sitting in my garage. And one day, there's a lady here that sells things, Kleenex boxes. And on the top of these Kleenex boxes, it makes it look like a couch so that the Kleenex is pulling out at the center of the couch. and she's covering it with all of these professional football team logos. So we decided to buy one for my relatives in Pittsburgh who are big Pittsburgh Steelers fans.
I can understand that.
So we bought several of them. She said, I'll bring them over to your house. One day she knocked on the door and she said, well, here's your boxes you ordered for me. Her boyfriend sitting in a car in my driveway, and my garage door is up. He looks into my car in there. And I went out to say, hi, you want to come in? He said, no, but I want to tell me about your car. And I said, come on out, I'll show you the car. So I showed him the car and I said, what's for sale? And he said, no, really? I said, yeah, you want to go for a ride sometime? He did. And he goes for the ride. He really likes it and ends up buying the car, which was really good because I didn't have space enough in my garage to fit all these things. But I miss it. You fall in love with your cars just like you fall in love with your wife, and you don't want to get rid of either one. Still got my wife, but I don't have my cars.
I've given up falling in love with my cars, and I like to get rid of them before they have 13 years of age.
Boys have their toys, and those are my toys.
Yeah. Are you thinking of getting another one?
No, I think I'm really out of the classic car business. I really think that I'm into other things right now. Car guys know what I'm talking about. You got to take care of these things. You got to know pretty much how to work on them yourself, at least old cars.
For new cars, there's a new event coming up every other month at the Obsessed Garage on Rolling Acres Road in their new location. They have a mini car show, and then they're going to take tours of the Obsessed Garage, including their manufacturing facility.
Oh,
they're
that'd be
going to
fun.
do that every other month. And the first one is tomorrow.
Circle your social calendars.
I'm going to be there. And part of the demo is Matt Moorman is going to give everyone there a personalized on how to properly wash your car without scratching it.
All right. If I wash my car, I'll take note of that.
The 2-bucket method. Matt is a great guy. He's been on the show. I can't wait to see what he's got planned for everyone tomorrow. As a mentalist and magician, why don't you tell our listeners what your favorite effect is?
Do we have time to do something for you right now?
Sure, but Dave brought a big black bag full of stuff.
We'll do something with you.
You know, I went to the magic shop in Daytona Beach about a week ago, bought a few items I thought I needed, got home and I can't find them. Can you mentally tell me where I put them?
Sorry.
Okay. Get back to this place you were standing in.
Okay. Since we're in Mike's theater, what do you call this room? His studio, his electronic studio. I didn't see any books here.
You put your sweater on top of the book. Turn around behind you.
Okay,
In
we'll
the
pick up
bookcase
one.
there.
This one is called Fatal Sins, and it's from the Sumter County Public Library.
Okay.
There's a page marker. Don't take that out. That's where I stopped reading, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to give you a choice, all right?
So why does everybody take the marker out?
I'll forget where I stopped, but
I'll tell you.
it shouldn't influence you in any way. I'm going to give you a
Okay.
free choice of any page in the book, okay?
Good.
For the listeners, about how many pages in the book, Mike? Helps to turn right to the back rather than counting them.
I would say 80, exactly.
All right. So what I'm going to have you do, it's more impressive if I get a big word than a little word, because if I get the ends of the butts, boring, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Don't say anything out loud to me right away, but turn anywhere in the book you like. Select a long, I won't see where you are. Doesn't make any difference. What I want you to do, but don't say anything out loud. I want you to make the selection. Select a nice, long, interesting word. Got one in mind?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay, close the book up. Okay, here's what we're going to do, Mike. As you might imagine, you've never done this before, so I'm going to help you along. It's hard for me to get an entire long word. It's just too many things, too many thoughts, too many symbols, too many letters. So what I'd like you to do is simply focus just on the first letter of the word, okay? And I tell you how this is going to work. Is this word that you're thinking of a noun that is a person, place, or thing?
Yes.
This is something you can visualize?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What I'd like you to do is visualize everything about this word. Sights, sounds, smells, colors, emotions, things you might associate with this word. Okay, I'm picking up one of your thoughts. Just focus on the first letter, and I'm going to write what I think. I wrote a letter on the pad here. Tell your listeners what the letter you're thinking of is and see how I do.
I found a word that began with H.
H.
And what letter did you write down? Letter S.
Yeah. So I didn't get it, okay? But I might have gotten your thought. If I don't get the word, try to get your thought. The S word that I got was the word scarf. Does that have anything to do with the word you're thinking of? Scarf, is it associated with what you were thinking of at all?
In a very loose way.
Okay, so you're starting with an H. Think of the second letter, okay? Repeat it now over and over yourself in your mind. Just keep saying it again and again. That's really good, Mike. I'm getting an A. Okay, third letter over and over again in your mind. Say it, N.
Yeah, you probably have it now.
I probably have it. I'm going to write it down here, and you'll have to tell them if I got it right or not. What's the word you're thinking of, Michael?
Handkerchief.
Handkerchief. Exactly right. You're really good at this, Mike. I think you have a career in psychic entertainment.
Thanks for being with us today.
It was great fun to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed my time.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. This is a shout-out for supporters Tweet Coleman, Ed Williams, Dwayne Romich, Paul Sorgen, Kathy Loving, and Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. The way our show grows is with your help. Text your friends about this show if you enjoyed listening, or just tell your friends about the show. We thank everyone for listening to the show. The content of the show is copyrighted by Rothvoice 2025. All rights reserved.